Hi everyone, I'm Tori Davis, a product designer here at GitLab working on the configure stage group. We largely work on features related to Kubernetes and auto DevOps. And as part of our OKR Q2 initiative on the UX department, we are recording common tasks that are performed within specific stages of the DevOps lifecycle in order to determine an experience baseline for those tasks. And we'll then follow up by providing improvements to the flow, which will ultimately improve the user experience. So today I'm going to walk through the following job to be done, which is when managing my clusters using AWS, I want to add my Kubernetes cluster to GitLab so I can deploy and manage my containerized application at scale using advanced features. So let's get started. I already have a project here. And the first step would be to find where I need to add a Kubernetes cluster. So I see that there's a button here. So I click it. And then I can see that there are a few options for adding a cluster integration. One is on GKE, it looks like, which is on Google Kubernetes Engine, which is not what I want to do because we're trying to add our cluster from AWS today. So it looks like the only other option is to add an existing cluster. And in order to add an existing cluster, I need to have a cluster to begin with. So I am going to Google how to add a cluster on EKS. So I'm going to choose the first documentation link that I see pop up on Google. And there's a few options, it looks like, that I can choose from. I'm going to go ahead and choose the console because I'm a little bit more familiar with the console. It looks like there are a few prerequisites that you have to do before getting to the step of creating the cluster. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link for getting started with AWS Management Console. So here it's now telling me what the prerequisites are. It looks like the first prerequisite is to create an EKS service role. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the link that they navigate me to. I'll drag it over here so I can keep following along. It says to choose roles and then create role. And it's telling me that I want to allow Amazon EKS to manage the cluster on my behalf. So I'm going to keep AWS selected. And then I'm going to find the option for EKS. And it looks like this is the only one. So I'm going to assume that's right. And it does say allow EKS to manage clusters on my behalf. So that sounds correct. And then it says to click next. And then it just says to choose next again. Looks like this step is optional, so I'm going to go ahead and just skip it for now. And then I need to choose a role name. So I'll just choose Tori EKS role and choose create role. And it looks like it is created. So now the next step is to create an EKS Cluster VPC. And I'm just going to follow along the documentation here as I'm a little unfamiliar with all these steps. So it tells me to navigate to this link and then says to select a region that supports Amazon EKS. Honestly, I'm not totally sure which regions support Amazon EKS, so I'm going to just keep the current region that I have. I also don't see where you would change the region, I guess here. I'm just going to go ahead and create the stack and hope for the best. So I'm going to copy the URL that they give me in the docs and choose next. And then I need to name my stack Tori EKS VPC. Tells me that I can keep the rest as default values, so I'm going to choose next. And then these are all optional, so I'm going to skip them and choose next again. And I can review the VPC and then at last create it. Now I'll wait for it to be created. I'm not sure exactly how long this will take. Looks like it's still going. Reading ahead in the docs, it looks like I'll need to choose the Outputs tab and then record some of these values. So I'll probably just leave this window open so I can reference it later if I need. Looks like it's done. Perfect. So Outputs tab, and here are the three key values that they're asking me to record. Cool. So then it looks like the next step is to make sure kubectl is installed and configured. It looks like there's two options that they provide for installing it. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Amazon link that they provide, just to stick with Amazon docs. No real reason. So I'm going to download the latest version of Kubernetes, I suppose. Just following the command they give me in the docs. Looks like step 2 is optional, so I'm going to go ahead and just skip it. And then follow the rest of the steps. Cool. So it looks like that's all that I needed to do. So I'll go back to the last docs page. The next step is to install the latest AWS CLI. So I'll click on the doc link for that. There's quite a few prereqs to getting this up and going. It looks like there's a few ways to install it. I'm just going to look at the first option that they give me and see if I meet those criteria. It says if I have Python version 3 or greater installed, then they recommend using the pip3 command. So I'm just going to check my Python version using ASDF, which is 3.6.2. So I'm good to use the pip3 command. I'm going to go ahead and copy the command and run it. And it successfully installed AWS CLI, and it looks like 1.16.207, which I'm assuming is the latest version. And it does say if you're unable to install version 1.16.156 or greater, then to do some other stuff, but I was able to install a later version, so I should be good to move on to creating my cluster finally, which is great. So the first step towards creating my cluster would be to open this link, I suppose. And then hit create cluster. And then I'm going to name my cluster. I'm going to stick with the latest version of Kubernetes, and then I should be able to choose the role that I created earlier. There's already a predefined VPC, but I know that I created one specifically, so I'm going to go ahead and select that one to use since it tells me that I should use the VPC that I created. And then subnets, I'm going to use the ones that are from my VPC, which looks like these three are correct. And then it tells me to select the security group that was also from my VPC. So I'm going to select this first one here since I see it's related to my VPC. And then the rest of these options look like I can just stick with the default for now. I'm going to hit create. And then it tells me that cluster provisioning usually takes between 10 and 15 minutes. So that's quite a long time. I'm going to just open up Google stopwatch so I don't have to pay attention to time really. So now we'll just wait 10 minutes or so. And it tells me over here that it's creating, which is good. Not even 3 minutes have gone by, so I'm just gonna randomly refresh for no reason because I know it's still creating. hopefully just another few minutes. I'm also unsure if it's going to automatically change the status or if I need to refresh, so I'm just going to keep refreshing just in case. All right, active, awesome. And it doesn't look like it automatically changed. I had to refresh. But it's under the amount of time the docs originally said, so that's kind of nice. At least I didn't have to wait 15 minutes. All right, so now it looks like the next step is to create a kubeconfig file. So I'm going to do that. Let's see. I already have the correct AWS CLI version installed. I checked that already. So the next step would be to run this command with the region that my cluster is in and my cluster name. So region, again, just says US East, North Virginia. There isn't really anywhere that specifies the region except for in the URL. So I would have to know that it's US East 1. I'm going to use US East 1 and the name of my cluster, and then I'll run the command here, and then looks like I can test the configuration, which looks like it worked. Now I need to create another stack for my worker nodes. So another step in the process. So I'm going to open up the same link that I did earlier in order to create another stack. I'm going to choose create stack, and then it looks like they're giving me a different URL this time. I choose next. And then it tells me to name my stack here, cluster name worker nodes, so I can just use that for my name, Tori EKS Cluster worker nodes. Then I need to add my cluster name and hope that I don't mistype. Then I need to choose the security group for the VPC that I created for my cluster. So I'm going to choose this one as Tori EKS VPC. Looks like I create a name for the node group, so I'm just going to say Tori node group. And then I can keep all these as the default. So the next field is node image ID, and I need to take the AM ID for the region that I'm in. So I already determined it was US East 1, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that and place it in this field. And then node volume size, I think I can just leave as is. I don't see anything here about that, so I'm just gonna leave it as 20, I suppose. All right, now I need to pick a key name, but I'd never created a key name. It wasn't part of the prerequisites, unfortunately. So I'm gonna open up the doc for creating one, and then can read through these docs. And it looks like to create a key pair, I need to go to another set of docs. And this gives me instructions for creating one. So I'm going to open up the link they give me. And it says, under network and security, choose key pairs. So I'm going to look for network and security, which is right here, and choose key pairs. And then I can create a key pair and just name it. Just use my name, Tori. And looks like that created successfully. I don't think any of these other steps are necessary for what I'm trying to accomplish right now. So I'm just going to ignore them and close these docs that I don't think I need anymore. So now that I've created the key pair, I need to add it here, but unfortunately it's not going to show up until I refresh, so I'm going to lose all of my progress that I've made here, and I'll have to start all over. So I'm going to go back up in the docs, copy the URL again, and hit next, and then fill in all of these fields again. And hope I don't, again, mistype my cluster name. Copy the node image ID from the docs. And then my key name should be here. Yep, it is, that's good. Bootstrap arguments. Looks like that's optional. So I'm gonna just leave it blank for now. VPC ID is the one that's from my VPC. So I should be able to just select, yeah, looks like mine's here, Tori VPC. And then same for the subnets. Choose the subnets that I created from my VPC. So it looks like I can see them here. Select all three of them and then choose next. So here's some more options. I'm going to go ahead and not add any of the optional tags. And then keep the advanced options as they are and choose next. Now I can review what I've done so far. And looks like I need to acknowledge that some resources may be created. And then choose create. All right. So again, it looks like it says that on the options page, oh no, wrong part. On the console, you can choose outputs tab and then record node instance role. So as soon as this is done, it looks like I will need the node instance role. So it looks like it's creating successfully. Taking a bit of time. Gonna just look ahead in the docs and see if there's anything I can do. So it looks like I'm going to download a configuration map, which I can do now. But then I need that node instance role, so I need to wait for this to finish. Still going. Still going. This takes a while. Awesome, finished. Cool. So it looks like now I can move on to this next step that tells me to open the file with your favorite text editor. I'm guessing I want to create this file. It doesn't tell me what to name it until I go down and see that we're going to apply that configuration with this file name. So I'm going to just copy that and name it that same thing. I can edit the file to include the node, whatever it's called. What is it called? Node instance role. And save the file. All right, I think that worked. So now I need to apply it. And it created the right file. So then it tells me I can watch the status of my nodes. I'm gonna run this command. You see that they're not ready yet. And now it looks like they're ready. So that's great. You can go ahead and stop this. And it looks like that's the last step. So now I have a working Amazon EKS cluster with worker nodes. So that's great. I'm ready to install add-ons and deploy applications to my cluster. But what I want to do is add my cluster to GitLab. So now I can go back to GitLab, and I don't think I'll need anything else, but I'll leave one tab open just in case. So it tells me if I need help adding these fields to GitLab, then I can read our documentation. So I'm going to open that up. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get some of these fields. I know the cluster name. I'm not sure how to get the API URL, so I'm going to look here at the docs. And it looks like I can just run this command and it should give me the API URL. And it does. So I can copy that, add it to GitLab. And then I need to get the certificate. So it looks like I need to run this command. And don't worry, for all you security people out there, I will be deleting all this before this video goes public. So then it looks like I need to take the default token and replace that with the command here. Oops. So I'm going to copy the name. Into the command. Cool, and there's my certificate. And now I need to get my service token, it looks like. So it tells me that I will need to create a file with this name. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and paste in the contents and hit save. And then I need to apply the service account and cluster role binding to my cluster using this command. Awesome. Looks like it was created successfully from what I can tell. So then I can retrieve the token using this command. And it should output my token. And it did. So I can just copy all of this, add it to GitLab. Great. So for the rest of these options, it looks like project namespace is optional. For the sake of this, I'm going to leave it blank. I'll keep it as an RBAC enabled cluster, and then I'll just choose for GitLab to manage it for this demo. And then I'll add the cluster to GitLab. Great, so now I see Tori EKS Cluster. It looks like it was successfully added to GitLab, although nothing really specifically tells me that it was successful, but I also don't see anything telling me that it failed. So I'm going to assume that it is safely connected to GitLab at this point. So going back to our baseline, I've graded this with a benchmark score of C-. The workflow needs improvements, but we're still able to complete the task. It takes quite a long time, and if you aren't used to reading a lot of documentation or you're unfamiliar with some of this terminology, the user may abandon the process and try again later. There are times when it can be frustrating, especially when you are taken away from the task at hand and you have to create something else and then start over. That can be pretty frustrating, but it was successful and we were able to complete the task. There was an excessive amount of tasks, which is why this is given a C- instead of just a C. But hopefully with the improvements that we make to this flow, we can increase the benchmark score over the next couple of milestones. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll post the link to these jobs to be done experience baseline issues, so feel free to contribute there if you have any thoughts or suggestions of how to improve this flow.